This is Ken Hance, best storyteller in Texas, and we have a delight for you today. We've got my friend Todd Staples, who's president of the Texas Oil and Gas Association. He's a former state representative for 6 years, a state senator for 6 years, and ag commissioner. I almost moved you there. I apologize. Ag commissioner for 8 years, and has served this state in a distinguished manner. And it's Commissioner, it's good to see you, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, it's good to be with you. I am here to confirm that Ken Hance is the best storyteller in Texas. I have been a fan for a long time, and I have used your material without attribution to you, very selfishly, in telling great stories and tales. Sometimes I would give you a little plug. Sometimes I would tell it like it was my very own.
Well, I understand. I've stolen yours sometimes. You told one of my favorite about the guy hijacking the car and the woman holding on to the baby. Tell that one right fast.
I don't know if I ought to tell that one today. That one's there's a lot of good funny ones. My favorite of yours that I want to hear is the whipping with a fan belt.
Oh, that was when my ag teacher was mad at a friend of mine, Tony Gable, and told him not to do something. If you do it, I'm going to whip you. And he did it, and he whipped him, but the only thing he'd get was a fan belt. And he whipped him with the fan belt, and the kid's dad got mad about it and came up and talked to the teacher about it, and they kind of got into it, and he whipped the dad with the same fan belt. And the school board met, and they didn't fire him. Somebody asked him why, and they said, well, hell, we didn't want to get whipped with that fan belt. That's back when the teacher said, if he told you, I'm going to do this, he meant it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
They had discipline in the schools.
That's right.
The thing that your association does, you're spokesman for the oil and gas industry. Tell us what the oil and gas industry means financially to the state of Texas and jobs-wise.
The Texas Oil and Gas Association is an amazing group. It represents every facet of the industry, upstream, midstream, downstream. It was created in 1919, so it's been around a few years. And the thing that attracted me to this organization and association and member companies is that, Kent, they're here for the long haul. They're here for what's good for Texas. And an example of that, just last year, this industry paid a record-breaking, whopping $24.7 billion in state and local taxes and state royalties. And even an Aggie like me can do the math on that, and that equates to $67 million a day, funding our public schools, funding our universities, funding our first providers, funding our highways. And that's on a daily basis, every 24 hours that this occurs. And it happens because of a variety of things. One is we have good rock in Texas. That's a plus. The good Lord has blessed us tremendously. But we also have an environment that encourages investment, that encourages job creation. And that's what seems to be at risk today. All these great things. And look, you don't have to live in the middle of the oil patch to benefit from that $25 billion because of all the other attributes that it brings to our state. Retired teachers have been funded from these programs, in addition to water programs to make certain we have enough water for our state. It's just, the list goes on and on. We just published a new report. It's on our website, TXOGA.org, TXOGA.org, and you can find an electronic version of that. But it's truly amazing when you think about the contributions that occur to our local communities and to our state. And look, let's face it, today the world knows that energy is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And our allies across the globe have been suffering mightily because of actions that have occurred by Russia and invasion of Ukraine. As a former railroad commissioner yourself, Kent, you understand firsthand. I think you were one of the only railroad commissioners that went to an OPEC meeting.
I went to OPEC meeting. They treated me nice, and price of oil was $8 a barrel first time I went. We were desperate. We were looking. And I told people, if I were a carrot farmer and there was a group somewhere that set the price of carrots, I'd know them. I'd want to have input.
Absolutely.
And with OPEC, they were very important then. They're not as important now. We're more of a swing producer in many ways. and that yet the United States at one point during the last administration, they were selling more oil and gas than they'd ever sold before.
And it's because of technology and innovation. People ask me all the time about oil and gas companies. I said, really, they're IT companies today. They're innovation and technology companies. They're pioneering technological breakthroughs that are literally making our lives better. This is a global commodity. Oil is traded all over the world. We are exporting a good bit of Texas oil today. We produce about 5.2 million barrels a day in the Lone Star State. That's about 43% of our nation's capacity. If Texas were its own country, a lot of people like that, by the way.
You go out across the state of Texas and mention that, and people go, "That's a good idea."
Yeah, they start clapping right then and there, and you don't have to say anything else. But if we were our own country, we'd be the fourth largest oil producing country in the world. United States, Saudis, Russia, and then Texas. And we rank like third nationally as a natural gas producer if we were our own country. So we're a big player not only domestically but globally. People are lining up at the doorstep of Texas asking for energy security in the form of liquefied natural gas.
Right.
And a few years ago, we were going to run out of gas. Gas prices were through the roof, and now they're through the floor. And it's because of technology. Hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling combined is what has made these unrecoverable, resources today where they can be achieved economically to where they can be put in the stream of products. But everything that we use on a daily basis, 96% of the products, from our makeups to our medicines to our tires to our smartphones, are made from a component of oil or natural gas as the basic building block. And so, yes, we use it in our automobiles, and yes, we use it for electrical generation, but we use it in our daily lives in ways, in our fibers in our carpet, that we don't even think about. In fact, oil and natural gas is still, fossil fuels are about 80% of the world's energy mix. And to think that we can do away with that overnight really borders on the line of putting people in harm's way.
It's absurd, and for them to prepare that everybody in 10 years, or even closer than 10 years, 2030, that everybody's going to have electric car and everything. Electric cars are expensive, and that electricity has to be produced some way.
Where do we get electricity from? That's right.
I don't understand that. And the car manufacturers, they bought into Washington, and they promote the electric car, no matter what. And
we're Texans. We love competition, right?
Yeah.
We believe that an all of the above approach. Let entrepreneurs develop the best solutions. Consumers are king. They should be able to make the choices that they want, but we shouldn't have government interference that picks winners and losers artificially. That drives up consumer cost. That makes those that can least afford energy the most susceptible to the types of changes. And so, when I talked about oil and gas companies being innovators, they really are producing a lower emissions fuel source than ever before. Gasoline is 99% cleaner than it was 50 years ago. Carbon dioxide emissions are down. Methane emissions are down, all while production has increased substantially.
But the environment's cleaner today than it has been in a long, long time. And you look at our environment compared to India and China and places like that. I was in China some years ago, and you couldn't see for the smog, and yet the Paris Accord, I didn't understand the Paris Accord. It put restrictions on us and exempted some of the restrictions for China and India. So it was a deal where we said we're going to penalize ourselves, but we're not going to penalize y'all. And keep on producing that coal. It's crazy.
And not only is our environment superior to other oil-producing countries around the world, but our employment standards are better. Our human rights standards are better. And the oil that's produced actually in the Gulf of Mexico and in the Permian Basin of Texas has a lower carbon intensity than other oil sources around the globe. So if you want responsibly produced energy, if you want national security, if you want affordable, reliable electric rates, you want a robust oil and natural gas industry in the United States of America. And then if you want something different, you can certainly choose that. Our whole electrical grid, Winter Storm Uri put the spotlight on Texas. I will say that our system performed very well this last winter storm as compared to other places around the country. And so, weather's a funny thing. If you're in agriculture, you have droughts and then you have floods, and that's just the way life is. And it's been that way since the beginning of time. But through smart policies, looking at the best technology, you can continue to improve modern life. We're all living longer than we've ever lived before in humankind, except in the very beginning, of course. And we're living that way because of affordable, reliable energy. And you and I didn't have to go milk the cows before we came in and sat down in your office this morning.
There's a book that's been out called Abundance, and it points out that the people today that are below poverty line are living better than the kings did 125 years ago. I mean, they have, most of them have some type of air conditioning and heat, and they have a cell phone, and they have, Phil Graham, one of your fellow Aggies there, Phil Graham just wrote a book, and we had him on the show not long ago, that points out this theory that the rich getting richer and poor getting poorer is wrong. And what they've done, the census people, they said that the poor getting poorer, but they didn't include food stamps, subsidized housing, Medicare, Medicaid, and they didn't include what they were getting. And yet on the rich, they didn't include the taxes. So you got to look at how much do you get to keep.
That's right.
And so. That is if you go back to 1947 when they first started keeping facts and figures on poverty, that the poverty level, anyone below that is living better today than they have in decades, if not century.
Phil Graham is certainly one that can explain it better than most. I was running for state senate a few years ago, and Senator Graham came down to travel around with me, Congressman Hance, and I was a little worried about getting out at the next stop. And he was like, well, what something troubling you, Staples? I said, well, there was a bill in the legislature when I was in the House that was going to put a tax on the sale of fireworks that would have funded some rural firefighting equipment. And I'm a big supporter of rural firefighters. I've been out there myself with them as a kid growing up in East Texas. I just, didn't want to tax firecrackers to do it. But they're beating me up over it, and I don't know how this is going to go. And Graham looked at me before we stepped out there on the stage. He said, you can tell them you can tax the 4th of July if you want to, but not over your cold, dead political body. and once that was out there on the table, it was all downhill after that. He had a great way of capturing that moment.
Graham was funny. We went to the Super Bowl in '78 when Dallas Cowboys were playing Denver, and we were both getting ready to go into Congress, and Dallas won right at the end of the game. And the crowd went wild. And Graham grabbed me and he said, they'll be yelling this way for me and you after we balance the budget. I said, this guy is focused. I was thinking about football, and Graham, he's still thinking about balance the budget. So he's my kind of guy. He's a great patriot.
He is. Doesn't miss a beat, served our country phenomenally. You and he both really did make a huge impact. Now, did you come back after Congress and run for railroad commission?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was getting the
Graham had.
You served in the state Senate before you went to Congress.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And I had Graham carried President Reagan's budget cuts, and I carried the tax cuts.
That's right.
We had 78 Democrats vote for Reagan's tax bill. Well, you can't get 7,
right,
or 8. That it's got gotten to be party lines so much, and I think some of those people get beat by just being so loyal to their party over their constituents. Constituents know what's right and what's wrong.
They do. That's the first lesson I learned as a freshman state representative coming in on a special election back in 1995, is that nobody in Austin votes for you.
Who was taking? Whose place did you take?
So when I ran, George W. got elected governor in November of '94. The first appointment he made was Elton Bomer, my state representative, and he appointed him as commissioner of insurance. And so that was an open seat, and it was a special election.
You'd been on the city council.
I served on the Palestine City Council, fixed some things that needed to be corrected, got back off, went back, started working. I ran for city council when I was 25, way too young, wasn't going to do it. And my phone rang at my real estate office one day, and my high school ag teacher called me, Harold Gilbert. He said, "Todd, we want you to run for city council." And I said, "Well, thanks, but no thanks. I'm trying to get a business going, a family going. I just can't afford to do it." And he got real quiet on the phone, and he said, "We gave to you. It's time for you to give back."
It's pretty good.
And so I told him what all former FFA members tell their high school ag teachers till the day we die. I said, "Yes, sir," and ran, fixed a few things, got back off. Then we
on Palestine,
East Texas community, about 18,000. Great, still claim that as home today. When they put my name tags and says Todd Staples Austin, I scratch out Austin, put Palestine in there.
That's good.
When I was elected ag commissioner, we still had a daughter at home, and so, you know, the Constitution at that time, our state Constitution, said the statewide officials had to reside in Austin. And so my wife told me I could reside there if I needed to, but the Constitution may tell me that, but it didn't tell her. Yeah. And so Palestine was our home, still our home today. And so
that's where you vote.
That's exactly right.
I still vote in Lubbock, and I've got a place there.
That's good. There's nothing like home. Texas is a great state. We've got some tremendous communities. In fact, the first railroad commissioner of Texas is from my home in Palestine, John H. Reagan.
Yeah.
His portrait still hangs at the Railroad Commission office today.
He gave up the U.S. Senate seat to become railroad commissioner.
That's right.
And I said, that's a powerful position. And I suggested that to Graham when I was railroad commissioner, that he wanted to swap jobs, but he didn't fall for it. He wasn't going for that. Were you born and raised in Palestine?
I was born and raised in Palestine. My dad worked at a Glass Containers Corporation for 36 years on shift work. Mother was an entrepreneur, started little businesses and would get them up and sell them. And when we were raised, it wasn't a question if we're going to college, it was when. And believe me, from being on the C&C program, that was my dad's name was Cecil. His twin brother was Chester, and they were involved in landscape business, cattle business, tree trimming business. And so wherever you would spend the night to get out of that work, C&C would find you, and they'd be in the driveway the next morning. And so we had to get out there and get it. And it was a great way to be raised, to learn the value of hard work, delivering a service and getting paid for it. And it really made me want to go to college, because I knew that was a tough way. But I mean, that's the thing about Texas and America. This really is the land of opportunity. You can do anything in this state, in this country, any state in this great country. If you're honest with people, you want to work hard, you be a person of your word, and you can accomplish anything you want to and live the American dream and overcome the circumstances of your birth.
How many brothers and sisters?
One brother and two sisters. Yeah.
And then you went to A&M.
I did. I went to Harvard on the Hill my first year, Trinity Valley Community College. I was a state FFA vice president, was traveling and speaking at FFA chapters and across the state. So I went 1 year there, and then I went 2 years at A&M and got through in 3 years and went right back home. Started a real estate appraisal business, real estate brokerage business, got involved in property tax consulting, did property inspections there for a while until I learned it was that wasn't what I wanted to do in August in East Texas, was crawl in the attic of a house. It was kind of hot.
Yeah.
And so, but that's what I did for a business. We got a retail plant nursery going that I was a partner with my family in, and got that started, and just kind of, gave back to my community and started. I have people ask me all the time, I'm sure you do as well, they decide they want to run for office. And I kind of ask them, well, what have you been doing? Because people want to see, are you serving in your community? Are you trying to make it better? And that's what people want to see. And we raised money for the local library, and had some great mentors there at home who of people that loved Texas and loved our community.
Cliff Johnson?
Cliff Johnson, former state representative, worked hard, served, came down here, went to work for Governor Clements, and helped get some things through the legislature. Cliff Elton Bomer before him. We had a state district judge, Bascom Bentley, who was a real loved Texas and loved to serve.
He was great. I love Bascom Bentley.
I was sitting next to Bascom Bentley, Judge Bentley, on a school day, and we were going to honor veterans. It was Veterans Day. And, man, I was looking at those veterans out there, and, I said, I don't know what in the world to say. This generation that's done so much for our country that's going to be meaningful. And I had 4 of those lined up all day long. And Judge Bentley looked at me and said, well, I'll tell you right now, people think Troy Aikman and Emmett Smith are heroes. They're not heroes. Those fellas out there are the heroes. And that's what I said everywhere. And then after that, the crowds just clapped, and they said, that was right. And that was when you talk about the Super Bowl, when you remember the days of Aikman and Smith and what they did. But when you compare the veterans, those that served our nation, to elite sports athletes at the time, and talked about who the real heroes were, everyone was on their feet honoring those men. It's amazing.
We had a Texas Tech graduate. He was in World War II, and he left school to go to World War II. He was on D-Day. He landed Omaha Beach, and a week later he was in a barn. He was sleeping in a barn, and he got up during the night to go to the restroom, and a mortar shell hit the barn and killed everybody. And he didn't come to until 2 days later in England. And they were arguing. There were 3 doctors arguing over where they were going to take his leg off. And he decided to get involved in the debate and convinced them that they shouldn't take it off. He had to have a special shoe to walk and everything, but he kept his leg. And the French gave him the French Legion of Merit Award. And so I saw that, and Texas Tech gave him a Distinguished Service Award, and he was in bad health. He was up in his 90s. And he couldn't get the award, so we had his daughter come out, and I gave her the award, and it was graduation, and there were 18,000 people in the arena, and he got a standing ovation. Wasn't even there. He is 340 miles away. That's a hero.
That's a hero.
And
right.
Those are the people that we need to remember and honor.
And it's about giving back, and that's what that generation did. My father-in-law was in World War II, and he wouldn't talk about it. When I got the family, I'd ask him all kind of questions, and I asked him what he did, and he said, well, we shot those, artillery cannons. And I said, really? Well, what was the range on those? He said, oh, man, there's about 8 or 9 miles. And I said, so y'all were able to kind of stay back and launch them in there? He said, oh, no, our commanding officer thought we ought to be able to see who we're shooting at. And that we could go story after story of people who gave back. And, I tell people serving in our military is an awesome thing to do. Serving as a first responder, serving as a police officer or firefighter. Not everyone can do that, but you can serve on the library board, or you can be a part of the Meals on Wheels of your community, or, if you don't have time, help fund some of those local things that really makes a difference in people's lives. I think that's what we need to do as a society, and I think that's what we need to reward and be the kind of country that always wants to help people with a hand up, not necessarily just keeping them in the position that they're in, but find a way to improve their lives.
Yeah, rather than a hand out, they need the hand up.
That's it.
I like that.
That's it.
Todd, I appreciate you being with us today. Todd Staples, former state representative and former state senator and ag commissioner, now president of the Texas Oil and Gas Association, giving us an update on the most important thing that we have in our economy. And if you take that and agriculture, it's big. And it's very big for the economy in the state of Texas. But we appreciate you being on Ken Hance, the best storyteller in Texas. And you still have the right to use some of those stories, and you don't even have to pay royalties. I told somebody that might have to pay royalties, and he said, "Well, I'll pay what they're worth," and that remains to be seen.
Well, I'm a Ken Hance fan, and I appreciate all that you've done for Texas, and it's been an encouragement, and I'm glad to call you friend.
Well, I appreciate that.